Happy Monday and welcome to day 5 of Lent. So today we are looking at Jesus calling the disciples through the Gospel of Matthew, and we're looking at chapter 4 verses 18 to 25. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, also called Peter, and Andrew, his brother. They were fishermen and were casting nets in the sea. "Follow me," said Jesus. "I'll make you fish for people." Straight away they abandoned their nets and followed him. He went on further and saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother. They were in the boat mending their nets with Zebedee, their father. He called them. At once they left the boat and their father and followed him. He went on through the whole of Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, healing every disease and every illness among the people. Word about him went around the whole of Syria. They brought to him all the people, tormented with various kinds of diseases and ailments, demon-possessed people, epileptics and paralytics, and he healed them. Large crowds followed him from Galilee, the 10 towns, Jerusalem, Judea, and beyond the Jordan. If you go to Galilee today, they will show you a boat that might have belonged to Andrew and Peter, or perhaps the Zebedee family. In one of the most remarkable archaeological finds anywhere in the Holy Land, which is full of them, a boat was found sticking out of the mud one summer when the level of the Sea of Galilee dropped dramatically in a period of dry weather. With great care, it was lifted clear of the sea bottom, cleaned and preserved. Now, in a special exhibit, millions of visitors can see the sort of boat Jesus' first followers used for fishing. It has been carbon dated to exactly the period of Jesus' life. The boat is a vivid reminder of the day-to-day existence of his followers and of what it cost them to give it all up and follow Jesus. They were, in today's language, small businessmen, working as families, not for huge profits, but to make enough to live on and have little over. Fish were plentiful and there were good markets. In a cosmopolitan area with soldiers, wayfarers, pilgrims and peddlers coming and going, as well as the local population, people would always want what they were selling, but it was hard work and sometimes dangerous. Their lives were hardly luxurious, but were mostly and modestly secure. So why did they give it all up to follow a wandering preacher? The same question faces people today. Why did this person give up a promising legal career to become a preacher, throwing away a lifetime of high earnings for the insecurity and poverty of pastoring and teaching a church? Why did that person abandon her remarkable gift as a singer in order to study theology and get ordained? Why did this person become a teacher, that one a prison governor, this one a monk, that one a missionary? And since these were obvious callings are only the tip of the iceberg of Christian vocation, why do Christians in millions of other walks of life regularly give up lifestyles and practices that look attractive and lucrative in order to maintain modesty, integrity, faith, hope, and love? The answer can only be in Jesus himself and in the astonishing magnetism of his presence and personality. This can be known and felt today, as we meditate on the stories about him and pray to know him better, just as the first disciples knew and felt his presence 2,000 years ago. Sometimes his call comes slowly, starting with a faint murmur and growing until we can no longer ignore it. Sometimes he calls people as suddenly and dramatically as he called Peter and Andrew, James and John. When that happens to you, by whatever means and at whatever pace, you will know Jesus has a way of getting through, and whatever we are engaged with, whatever nets we are mending or fish that we are catching, somehow we will be sufficiently aware of his presence and called to know what it is that we're being asked to do. At least we will know we're being asked to follow him. We won't necessarily know where it's all going to lead, and we won't perhaps be quite so eager if we did. "You'll be catching people now," was what Jesus said to Peter and Andrew. What did they think that would mean? Did they know how the people in question would feel about it? Did they have any inkling that both of them would end up being crucified, as their master would be? Did James, the brother of John, have the slightest idea that within a few years he would be dead, killed on the orders of Herod? No, they didn't. God in his mercy reveals things little by little, nor did Peter think he would end up with a huge church in Rome dedicated to his memory, or Andrew suppose that whole countries, Scotland, Greece, Russia, would regard him as their patron saint. They never saw the glory nor the pain that day when a young man walked by the sea in their little town of Capernaum, on the north shore of Sea of Galilee. They only saw him, and that was enough. In him, as Paul might have said, all the treasures of glory and pain are hidden. That is what the gospel story is all about. But it wasn't just personal magnetism that drew people from hundreds of miles around to seek out what Jesus was as he went to and fro across the region of Galilee. It was his remarkable healings. Matthew will tell us more stories about this and such events in due course, but for the moment, in a quick summary fashion, he tells us how word suddenly went out that people whose lives had been blighted by every kind of illness and disease, and we only have to think for a minute of life before modern medicine to realise what that would actually mean, could be healed if they came to this extraordinary man. Historians today are agreed that this is the only explanation for the crowds that Jesus grew. He really did have remarkable powers of healing. But Jesus was never simply a healer, pure and simple. Vital though that was as part of his work, for him, the healings were signs of the new things that God was doing through them. God's kingdom, God's sovereign, saving rule, was at last being unleashed upon Israel and the world through him. How could this not bring healing in its wake? Soon the fishermen found themselves not placidly working at their family craft beside the lake, but at the centre of bustling crowds. Jesus' mission was well and truly launched, and they were caught up in it. What pulls in the crowds today? Entertainment, of course, football, rock music, big fireworks, parties, and great national tragedies such as the death of a popular princess or a major disaster. What would it take? What could and should Jesus' followers be doing today that would send people off with the word that somehow something new was happening and that everyone should come quickly? So something for reflection and discussion. In what ways do Jesus' presence and personality continue to attract and call people to follow him today? The passage suggests that Jesus' healings were not only acts of compassion and restoration, but also signs of the new thing that God was doing through him, ushering in God's kingdom. How can today's followers of Jesus engage in acts that signify the arrival of something new and transformative, compelling others to take notice and be drawn to faith? I think there's a lot of difficult questions here, because we don't have Jesus' presence in the same way that the disciples did back then, or the followers and the people in the area at the time, because they had him physically and they got to see with their own eyes. And we've spoken about this before with faith and believing in things that we can't see. But I think his presence is ever available to us through the Gospels in particular, but through the Bible, the written word, God breathed, which is the word of God, which obviously the disciples didn't have at the time, and we should be so grateful that they wrote all these things down. And had it not been for the fact that Jesus wasn't just there for people who either had the intelligence to understand or were of a higher class or whatever it might have been, if it hadn't have been for the likes of drawing in those who needed him, those who were even hated, like the tax collector, if it wasn't for that, then we wouldn't have the Gospels to immerse ourselves in. And that's how his presence and personality come through to us and can attract us to follow him today. I think, how do we engage in acts that signify the arrival of something new and transformative. Our engagement with it is the way in which we live our lives, the way in which we desire to be as much like Jesus as is humanly possible. And that's exactly the words, as is humanly possible, because it's not possible to be that level of perfection, but we can strive for it, which is going to make us better for each day. And that in itself is transforming us through Jesus within us, transforming us into something new, because we've been washed clean from everything that we've done wrong on a daily, hourly, minute by minute basis. If we mess up, which we are going to, that doesn't mean that we've ruined it. It gives us this precious gift that even though we mess up, we can keep striving to be better, more like Jesus every single day. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Have a nice day, guys.